Hi everyone, welcome back to our web development course using HTML5. So for this module, we'll talk about the HTML canvas. So what we would be talking about in this module is, first, I want to give you a background about the HTML canvas. So what can it provide to us as developers, and what previous technologies were used before the canvas was introduced. And then we'll create a canvas element. Probably I'll talk about some of the things that you would need to remember when creating it, and we'll just draw simple shapes using path and fill. Okay, so a little background first. So what the canvas provides us is a way for us developers to draw directly on our web pages. Before, the only way that is possible is by using plugins like Flash, Silverlight from Microsoft, or you can use other JavaScript libraries. So what the canvas provides us is browser support for drawing directly on our pages. Okay, so several things that I need to remember when creating the canvas element. One thing is the contents of a canvas can only be drawn using JavaScript. So this particular element relies heavily on our scripting, so that we would be able to create or provide content in it. Okay, so let's start creating a canvas element. So to draw canvas, of course, we need to first create a canvas element. Let me just go to my text editor. So I have created, so I am using an HTML template here I have created before. So the first thing that you would need is, of course, to create canvas element. The canvas element is represented by the canvas tag. Okay, one very important thing to remember when creating the canvas element is you have to provide the width and the height directly inside the canvas as attributes. As I have mentioned in the slides, using CSS width and height for the canvas only changes the resolution of the canvas and not the size of the canvas itself. So you have to provide a width and height attribute inside the canvas. Let me just place here small area in our screen. Let's say the width and the height will be for 180 pixels. So the values are in pixels, and of course we have to provide a way for us to access and identify the element from JavaScript. So let's just place here my paper. I also mentioned that the contents of the canvas can only be drawn using scripting. So why is it that it has a closing tag? Obviously, we can see that the canvas is a container element. So we can actually add anything in between the canvas elements. So why is it created like that, and not just place there an empty element instead, since all its contents would be coming from JavaScript anyway? The reason is for compatibility. The canvas element might not be supported by other browsers yet, but of course most modern browsers would have support for it. But if I would be opening this page with a browser that doesn't support canvas, what would be visible would be the content inside the canvas element that we have declared inside the canvas element, no? So it is provided here so that we would have a way for the users to see other content if Canvas element is not supported in their browsers. So let me just place here some content. Canvas element is not supported in your browser. Okay, that's it. And let's just display this in our browser. Okay, so what just happened? So what we are seeing right now is an empty canvas. By default, the canvas element doesn't have um, formatting or default formatting. So we have to provide some CSS so that we would be able to see our canvas. So let me just go back to my code. Let's just add here for my canvas some uh, borders so we would be able to see it. So let's set the border to 1 pixel solid black back borders. And actually you can place here background color if you want. I place here light gray background color. Let's go back to our browser, and you have here a very simple canvas. Okay, so let's go back to our so how can we draw on our canvas? So to draw on canvas, of course we must first have a reference to our canvas element and then create the context for that canvas. So what the context provides is an access to the canvas element so that we would be able to draw in it. Currently, the support for browsers is only for 2D context, but eventually the browsers might have an ability to draw 3D objects. But for now, we'll just utilize the 2D context of the canvas. So let's do that. So from my, let me just decrease the size of my text here so that you have more space. And let me just place here a handler, event handler for the onload, so that uh, the script would only run after the whole window has been loaded. Okay, so the first thing that you would need is the access to the canvas. So let's just place here canvas is equals to get element by id and provide the id of canvas, and then we have to have an access to the context of the canvas. So it would be canvas dot get context. For now, we can only use the 2D context, so provide that value. Okay, next, of course, since we already have the context, we now need to draw something on the screen or on our canvas. So what do we do next? Okay, to draw a very simple rectangle, we can call the fill rect or the fill rectangle function from the context. So this is the syntax for calling the fill rect function. It would have 4 parameters. X and Y basically would just be the initial position where the drawing would start. Of course, the width and the height would be the width and height of the shape that we would be creating. One thing that you would notice is uh, the canvas, sorry, the fill rect function doesn't have a parameter or a setting so that we can change the color or the background color for the shape. We'll talk about that later on. But by default, the fill rect function would use as its fill or the background color for the shape the black color. Okay, so let's do that. Let's add um, context dot fill rect, then provide your parameters. Okay, so when calculating or when using or providing the x and y position of the shape, you would start counting or you would start measuring from the top left part of the canvas. So our top left part would be, going back to our browser, would be in this area. Okay, so let me just place it um, a few pixels away from the border. So that's the values that we would be using are in pixels by default. Okay, so I would be placing the starting point of my rectangle 20 pixels from the top, 20 pixels away from the left. Okay, and then let's just use, okay, so what I would be creating is just a simple square in my canvas. Let's just look at it. That's it. Very simple. But what if I want to draw, instead of just instead of a filled out shape, I just want to draw an outline of a shape or an outline of a rectangle or a square. So instead of using fill rect function, we'll use the move to and the line to function. So what this function does is much like drawing using a pencil. So the move to function would be the starting point of the drawing. The line to function would be uh, the next point of the drawing. Of course, close path would close the shape that we were creating. And for us to draw a path, we have to define the line width of the path, and instead of filling it up with a color, we just invoke the context stroke. So what it would do is it would just create an outline around the shape that we have created. Okay, so let's create one. If I want to